Welcome back to our deep dive series. Today, we're looking at India. It's this incredible place, the energy, the festivals, a billion plus dreams, and there's this big vision. India as a global superpower by 2047. That's the official line, anyway. But the question we want to dig into is, well, is that path really set? Or is it more of a grand narrative that's still being written day by day?
Exactly.
We're going to try and pull back the curtain a bit, look at the numbers, the realities on the ground, and figure out what it actually takes to be a superpower today. I mean, the scale is just staggering, isn't it? The population overtook China's last year.
Yeah, huge.
And the economy's growing at, what, 6 or 7% a year? That sounds pretty good on paper.
It does. But being a superpower, it's more than just having a big military or a lot of money, right? It's about really shaping things globally, economics, military strategy, technology, even culture. Think about the U.S. or China.
Right. Global influence.
Exactly. So India starts with some amazing raw materials. We've got 1.4 billion people, a really young workforce, which is key, and, well, a functioning, if sometimes chaotic, democracy.
Definitely chaotic sometimes.
Yeah. But the real challenge, and this comes through in the material we've looked at, is whether all those pieces can actually be put together into like a well-oiled machine that can project that kind of influence everywhere.
Okay, let's start with the economy then. That seems like a good place to begin. Where was the real kickoff point for India's economic story as we know it today?
Oh, absolutely. 1991, no question. India was facing this pretty severe financial crisis, and they made this incredibly brave move. They basically ditched the license rush.
Ah, yes. License rush. Sounds bureaucratic.
Oh, it was. Imagine trying to start anything and just drowning in permits and red tape.
Yeah.
It almost felt designed to stop people from doing things. So getting rid of that or starting to dismantle it really unleashed this wave of entrepreneurship.
And that led to the whole IT boom.
That was the foundation.
Yeah.
Suddenly you had cities like Bengaluru, Hyderabad becoming these global tech hubs, IT outsourcing. It really put India on the map in a new way.
And the growth since then, I mean, the numbers are pretty eye-popping. It's now the fifth largest economy, right? $3 trillion GDP. Overtook the UK in 2022.
Yep, that was a big symbolic moment.
And they're projecting it could hit third place by 2030, just behind the US and China. That's 6-7% annual growth. It's faster than most other big economies.
It is consistently strong.
And you see it in things like Apple. They're making way more iPhones in India now. Like, what is it, 23% projected by the end of next year, up from just 6% a couple of years ago.
That's a huge jump. Shows real confidence.
Plus, they're making a big push in renewables, solar, clean hydrogen. They clearly want to be a leader there.
Definitely positioning themselves for the future energy landscape. But here's the, let's call it the plot twist. All that amazing headline growth, it doesn't automatically mean everyone's getting richer.
Okay, how so?
Well, look at the per capita income. It's around $2,400. That still keeps India in the lower middle income category globally. The World Bank actually estimated it could take like 75 years for the average Indian income to reach just a quarter of the average U.S. income.
75 years. Wow. So there's a disconnect between the overall size of the economy and individual prosperity.
A massive disconnect. And it feeds into this huge issue of inequality.
Right. You mentioned inequality. How bad is it?
It's stark. There was a big report in 2024 from Thomas Piketty's World Inequality Lab. It basically said income inequality in India is worse now than it was under British rule.
Worse than colonial times.
It's
Quite a statement.
It really is. And then you layer on the jobs crisis. You've got this incredibly young population, average age 29. That should be a massive advantage, the demographic dividend everyone talks about.
Right. Loads of young workers ready to go.
But the problem is there aren't enough good jobs for them. The International Labor Organization found something really worrying. Educated young Indians, age 15 to 29, are actually more likely to be unemployed than those with less education.
Wait, more likely. So getting an education doesn't guarantee a job?
Not necessarily the right job or any job in some cases. It points to a huge mismatch between the skills people have and the jobs the economy is creating. That's a serious problem if you want sustained growth and stability.
Okay, so a complex economic picture. Growth, yes, but significant challenges with distribution and jobs. How does this translate to, well, military power and influence? India definitely spends a lot on defense.
It does. $81 billion this year, 1.4 million active personnel. It's one of the world's biggest forces, and they've shown they're willing to use it differently now. Think about the Balakot airstrike in 2019 after that terror attack.
Right. Hitting targets inside Pakistan, that was a big shift.
A very big shift. It signaled a move away from strategic restraint towards more preemptive action. Changed the game in the region, really.
But the region is tough, as you said. China's right there.
Looming large. China's military budget is, what, 4 times India's? And those border disputes just keep simmering, sometimes boiling over. It's a constant source of tension.
And it's not just China, is it? Some of the neighbors seem to be tilting towards Beijing.
Yeah, that's a real headache for New Delhi. You see countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, the Maldives. They've been strengthening ties with China, often through economic investment, which creates this complex dynamic right in India's backyard.
Strategic encirclement vibes.
A bit, yeah. And then you have Myanmar trying to balance India and China. Plus, India's own handling of things like the Rohingya crisis hasn't always helped this regional image, according to some reports.
And the Navy. They're building more ships.
They are, aiming for 170 ships by 2030. That's a significant expansion, definitely trying to project power into the Indian Ocean. But China's Navy is growing incredibly fast, too. India is still playing catch-up in many ways.
So, dealing with China and the neighborhood is a major strategic challenge. How important are partnerships like the Quad, India, the U.S., Japan, Australia?
Oh, absolutely vital. The Quad is really seen as a key way to counterbalance China's influence in the Indo-Pacific. It provides a framework for security cooperation, joint exercises, that kind of thing.
And they still buy a lot of weapons from Russia, despite Western pressure.
They do. It's a long-standing relationship, and India values its strategic autonomy. They resist being told who they can partner with. It's a pragmatic approach, getting hardware where they can. But ultimately, to be a real global player, they need to boost their own defense manufacturing and technology. Less reliance on imports.
Makes sense. Okay, let's switch gears to technology. This feels like a real bright spot. The IT sector is massive.
Huge. $250 billion. Employs millions. It's the backbone of outsourcing for so many global companies, from basic call centers years ago to, really complex data analytics and software development now.
And things like UPI, the payment system, that seems genuinely world-class.
It really is. The Unified Payments Interface has totally transformed digital payments in India. It's incredibly smooth, widely adopted. It's a fantastic example of homegrown Indian innovation scaling up massively.
And we mentioned renewables earlier. They're serious about green tech, too.
Very serious. You've got big players like Adani Solar pushing down costs, huge government targets for solar power, clean hydrogen, even carbon capture. They see a chance to lead in the next wave of energy tech.
And electric vehicles.
Yeah, another big push. The goal is 15% of passenger cars sold being electric by 2030. That's a big leap from maybe 3% in 2025. Falling battery costs and better charging infrastructure are helping drive that.
So lots of momentum in tech and green energy, but are there roadblocks here too?
Definitely. Infrastructure is one. Roads, ports, reliable power. They're improving, no doubt, but they're not quite at the level you'd see in, say, China or other major manufacturing hubs. These things can still be bottlenecks.
Right. You need the physical infrastructure to support the digital and industrial growth.
Exactly. And then there's the brain drain issue. India produces tons of amazing tech talent, engineers, scientists, but a lot of the very top minds end up leaving. They go to Silicon Valley or Europe or elsewhere.
So they're educating people who then fuel innovation outside India.
To some extent, yes. It's a long-standing challenge. To really reach that superpower level in tech, India needs to not just produce talent, but keep more of it, build ecosystems that can genuinely compete head-to-head with places like California, not just, provide services for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Build it and keep it there. Let's talk about influence beyond the hard power stuff, economics, military. What about soft power, capturing hearts and minds globally?
India has some serious assets here. Bollywood is a global phenomenon. Yeah. Yoga is practiced everywhere. Indian food, butter chicken, is practically universal currency, isn't it?
True. Bollywood's reach is incredible. Pre-COVID, they sold something like 1.6 billion movie tickets a year. And now streaming platforms are full of Indian content.
Absolutely. And they've had some smart diplomatic wins, too. Remember, vaccine diplomacy during COVID. India supplied hundreds of millions of vaccine doses to over 100 countries. That generated a lot of goodwill, especially in the developing world.
Yeah, that was a big moment.
And think about Sri Lanka's economic crisis in 2022. India stepped in with $4.5 billion in aid when China and the IMF were slower to act. That really solidified its image as a reliable neighbor, a regional stabilizer.
But it can't all be smooth sailing on the soft power front, can it?
No, there are definitely contradictions. You mentioned Bollywood's reach, but some recent big-budget films have kind of flopped, suggesting maybe they need some fresh creative energy. And more fundamentally, soft power is linked to how a country treats its own people and how it's viewed internationally.
Also,
Well, look at India's Human Development Index ranking. It's 122 out of 191. That indicates struggles with basic things like healthcare, education, living standards for many millions. It's hard to project an image of a thriving superpower if large parts of your own population are lagging behind.
right, the internal reality has to match the external image.
Precisely. And then there are international criticisms. That 2018 UN report on Kashmir, accusing India of excessive force, definitely damaged its image among some audiences. And despite its size, India still isn't part of key global clubs like the G7 or APEC. It suggests it's not quite at the top table yet in terms of global governance.
And navigating the whole US-China rivalry must be tricky too.
Incredibly tricky. India tries to maintain its strategic autonomy, not get pulled too strongly into one camp or the other, but balancing relationships with both Washington and Beijing in this sort of new Cold War environment is a huge diplomatic challenge. You don't want to pick fights you can't win.
So pulling it all together, the economy, military, tech, influence, what are the really fundamental roadblocks, the big potholes India needs to fix to make that 2047 superpower dream happen?
Well, we'll keep coming back to a few key things. That massive income inequality we talked about, it's not just unfair, it can breed instability. And the jobs crisis, particularly for the educated youth you mentioned, 65.7% unemployment for them, that's staggering.
A ticking time bomb, you call it.
It really feels like one. Then there are concerns about institutions. Are the courts, the media, truly independent checks on government power? Some observers, like the historian Ramachandra Guha, talk about India's deep internal fault lines, social, political, regional, that make national cohesion a constant challenge.
And infrastructure, still lagging.
Still lagging behind where it needs to be, especially compared to China. And finally, corruption. It's still a pervasive issue, a drag on business, a source of public frustration. It just makes everything harder and less efficient.
Okay. So after laying all that out, what's the final verdict? Is India on track? Is it superpower potential or something more concrete?
I think super potential is probably the right way to frame it right now. India absolutely has the essential ingredients, the huge population, the economic growth potential, the ambition, the tech talent. The foundation is being laid with reforms, innovation, and that independent foreign policy. But those big challenges, the inequality, the lack of sufficient jobs, the questions around institutions, loose screws in the machine. If they're not tightened, the whole thing could wobble or even stall. There's an interesting take from economist Martin Wolf. He suggested India could be a superpower by 2047, but maybe not a high-income one, which highlights that difference between overall national power and widespread individual prosperity.
So what does it absolutely need to do?
Sustain that growth, definitely 6% or more.
Yeah.
Create millions upon millions of good jobs for that youth bulge. And crucially, build and maintain strong, independent institutions that people trust. That's maybe the hardest part.
It sounds like a monumental task. But then again, looking back, India has surprised people before, hasn't it? The IT revolution, the space program reaching the moon, it has this history of, well, defying the odds.
It absolutely does. That resilience, that ability to innovate under pressure is remarkable. It definitely offers hope.
So the story isn't finished.
Not even close. For now, India remains this fascinating potential superpower, trying to move forward while navigating some really significant internal and external challenges. It's a nation of contrasts, still very much figuring out its path.
Right. And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with this thought. Can India manage these deep internal contradictions? If it truly invests in its people, bridges those gaps, and keeps finding ways to blend its unique culture with cutting-edge innovation, maybe that superpower dream isn't so far-fetched after all. It's definitely a story, like a grand Bollywood epic, and we're certainly nowhere near the final act.